Smoke alarm screamed at 2:14 in the morning, and by the time I got my boots on, I could already smell it through the guest room door. Not burnt toast. Not a candle. Structure fire. Wiring, probably, from the sharp electrical bite underneath the smoke. 29 years of running into buildings other people were running out of had taught me that smell the way other men know their own handwriting. Marcus, I pounded on my son's door. Get up. Now. He opened it, rubbing his eyes. Dad, what? House is on fire. Get Jennifer and the baby. Go. He didn't argue. That much he'd kept from his childhood, at least. But behind him, in the hallway light, I saw my daughter-in-law standing frozen, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. How do you even know that? She said. It's probably just the dishwasher again. It's not the dishwasher, Jennifer. Get the baby. 3 months earlier, nobody in that house would have believed I knew the difference between a grease fire and a gas leak. 3 months earlier, Jennifer had introduced me to her book club as Marcus's father. He tinkers with cars. Tinkers. 29 years as a firefighter, 11 of them as fire chief of a department that covered 40,000 people, and I'd become a man who tinkers with cars. I'm Walter Doyle, 67 years old, widower, retired fire chief of the Meridian County Fire Department, though nobody in that house knew the second part. I should probably explain why. My wife Carol died 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer, the quiet kind that doesn't announce itself until it's already made up its mind. After the funeral, my son Marcus asked if I wanted to move in with him and Jennifer instead of rattling around our old house alone. I said yes before I'd really thought it through. Grief does that. It makes you say yes to things because saying no feels like one more loss you can't survive. Marcus and Jennifer had a spare room over the garage, converted, with its own little bathroom. Nice enough. Private enough. I brought over my recliner, my books, a box of photographs, and not much else. I left almost everything from my career in storage. The medals, the commendation plaques, the photograph of me shaking hands with the governor after the Ridgemont warehouse fire, the one where we pulled 6 people out of a collapsing structure and lost one good man doing it. I didn't bring any of it, partly because grief makes you want to disappear a little, partly because of something Jennifer said the very first week I moved in. We were at dinner. Marcus mentioned, just in passing, that his dad used to run into burning buildings for a living. Jennifer laughed, not meanly, just carelessly, the way people laugh at things they've decided aren't important. That's sweet, she said. Small-town hero stuff. Then she changed the subject to a school district rezoning issue. 3 streets can bore anyone into surrender. Small-town hero stuff. I let it go. I told myself she didn't mean anything by it. But something in me quietly decided not to correct her. If she wanted to think I was a retired handyman who liked crossword puzzles, I'd let her think that. There's a particular freedom in being underestimated. You learn things about people that way. You learn who they actually are when they think no one important is listening. And over the following months, I learned plenty about Jennifer. She wasn't cruel, exactly. She was careful. Careful about who got credit at dinner parties. Careful about which grandparent got introduced to which neighbor. Careful about seating charts at her sister's wedding, where I ended up at a table near the kitchen door with 2 of Marcus's college roommates I'd never met. Small cuts. That's what they were. She never raised her voice at me. She was polite, even warm sometimes. But I watched her shrink me down, conversation by conversation, into something easy to store on a shelf. Marcus's father, sweet old guy, doesn't get out much anymore. I noticed it most with my granddaughter, Lily. She was 2, then 3. Jennifer would say things like, "Grandpa's resting, sweetie, let's not bother him," when I was sitting right there, perfectly capable of building a block tower or reading a book aloud. She wasn't wrong to protect her daughter's time, but she was making decisions about my capacity without ever asking what my capacity was. One evening, about 4 months in, Jennifer's parents came for dinner. Her father, Gerald, had been an insurance adjuster for 30 years, and he liked to talk about it the way some men like to talk about their glory days on a football field. He mentioned, offhand, that he'd once assessed damage on a warehouse fire out in Ridgemont, years back. Big one. 6 people pulled out. My stomach went tight. That was my fire. That was the one where I lost Danny Alvarez, 26 years old, 3 weeks married. I remember that fire, I said quietly. Gerald looked at me the way you'd look at a dog that suddenly started reciting poetry. "Oh, you hear about it on the news." "Something like that," I said. Jennifer smiled at her father like I'd just confirmed something charming and slightly pitiable, and moved the conversation along to dessert. I didn't correct him. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself pride was a young man's disease, and I'd already buried enough of my pride alongside Carol. But that night, lying in the guest room over the garage, I took out the one thing I had brought with me from storage without really deciding to, a small brass fire department badge, Danny's badge, the one his widow had given me at the funeral because she said I'd been more of a father to him than his own had been. I held it for a long time. The following months were quieter cuts, but they added up the way water adds up against a foundation. Jennifer redecorated the house and didn't ask if I wanted to keep any of my things in the common areas. My recliner ended up in the garage room permanently, replaced downstairs by something from a catalog. She stopped inviting me to parent-teacher conferences for Lily's preschool, since it's really just for the parents. She once referred to me, to a neighbor, as Marcus's dad who lives with us. Not my father-in-law. Not part of our family. Lives with us. Like weather. Like something you accommodate. Marcus noticed some of it. He'd apologize afterward, quietly, in the kitchen. She doesn't mean it like that, Dad. I always told him I knew. I didn't always believe it. The night of the fire changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. It started in the kitchen wall behind the refrigerator, old wiring, overloaded from years of appliance upgrades nobody had bothered rerouting for. By the time the smoke alarm went off, it was already crawling up into the space above the ceiling. Marcus got Jennifer and Lily moving toward the front door. I went the other way, toward the kitchen, and put my hand flat against the wall before I opened a single door. Hot. Not blistering, but hot enough to tell me the fire had a head start on us. Walter, what are you doing? Jennifer shouted from the hallway, Lily on her hip, coughing already. We need to leave. You need to leave. Now. Out the front, not through the kitchen. Go. There's no time to argue with him, Marcus said, and pushed her toward the door. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink. I'd installed it myself the week I moved in, quietly, without asking permission, the same way I'd quietly checked their smoke detector batteries every 3 months without anyone noticing, and hit the visible flame licking out from behind the outlet cover before it could reach the cabinets. It wouldn't stop the fire. Nothing about that wiring was going to be fixed with a 5-pound extinguisher, but it would slow it down. Minutes count. Minutes are the only currency that matters in a structure fire, and I'd spent 29 years learning exactly how to spend them. Everybody out the front, I said again, calm, the way I'd been trained to be calm when everyone else's nervous system was screaming. Now, we got outside. I stood in the driveway in my undershirt and pajama pants, 67 years old, watching orange light bloom behind the kitchen windows, and for one strange moment, I wasn't standing on Marcus's lawn at all. I was 28 years old again, first year on the job, watching my first real structure fire from the outside for the first time and understanding, all at once, that this was going to be my whole life. The fire trucks arrived 9 minutes later. I know because I checked my watch. 9 minutes is good, for a residential area, at 2 a.m. The first engine pulled up and a young captain climbed down, already barking orders to his crew. He glanced at me standing there in the driveway, an old man in pajamas, and probably would have walked right past me if I hadn't said, without really planning to, 2-inch line, hit the kitchen wall first, fires traveling in the space above the ceiling toward the bedroom side. He stopped, looked at me harder. You have eyes on the seat of the fire? Behind the refrigerator. Faulty wiring, most likely. I hit it with an extinguisher, bought you a few minutes, but it's already gone vertical into the wall cavity. He studied my face for a second longer than a stranger normally would. You in the trade? Retired. Retired what? I hesitated. Not out of modesty. Out of 29 years of habit, the same habit that had kept me quiet at Jennifer's dinner table for months. Then I looked past him, at Jennifer standing barefoot on the cold driveway with Lily wrapped in a blanket, staring at me. Fire chief, I said. Meridian County. Retired 6 years. The captain's whole posture changed. Chief Doyle. He actually straightened up. You trained half the senior guys at my house. Captain Reyes talks about you constantly. Danny Alvarez is captain? He's a battalion chief now. Says you're the reason he stayed in this job after Ridgemont. I nodded, throat tighter than I expected. Go. Your crew needs you. He went. I watched them work. Good, efficient, disciplined, The kind of crew that makes an old chief's chest ache with something like pride and something like grief at the same time, because I couldn't run into that building with them anymore, and some part of me would always want to. It was another 40 minutes before they had it fully knocked down. The kitchen was gutted. The rest of the house had smoke and water damage, but stood. Nobody was hurt. That's the only number that ever really matters. Jennifer hadn't said a word to me the entire time. I noticed that. I noticed everything, the way I always had, quietly, without commentary. We stayed in a hotel that night, the four of us in 2 rooms. Marcus and Jennifer put Lily down and then sat in the little sitting area with me. All 3 of us too wired to sleep, coffee from the lobby machine going cold in paper cups. "Dad," Marcus said finally. "You're Chief Doyle?" "The Chief Doyle. Why didn't you ever?" "Fire chief of what?" Jennifer interrupted, quiet, and I could hear something underneath the question that wasn't quite an accusation and wasn't quite an apology either. It was closer to disorientation. The kind you feel when a piece of furniture you've walked past every day for months turns out to be something else entirely. "Meridian County Fire Department," I said. 29 years on the job. 11 as chief. Retired the year before your wedding. "You never told me that. You never asked." She flinched, just slightly, and I felt no satisfaction in it. That surprised me. I'd imagined, in some quiet, resentful corner of myself, that a moment like this might feel like vindication. It didn't. It felt like grief with a new shape. "I introduced you to my book club as someone who tinkers with cars," she said slowly. "I remember. You let me say that." "I did. For a year and a half." "I did," I said again, because it was true, and there was no use pretending otherwise now. She was quiet for a long moment, turning her coffee cup in small circles the way I'd seen 100 grieving people do in waiting rooms over the years, needing their hands to do something while their mind caught up. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would you let me think that about you?" I could have given her an easy answer. I could have said something gracious about not wanting to make a fuss, about humility, about grief making a man quiet. All of that would have been partly true. But I learned a long time ago, mostly from watching Danny Alvarez's widow stand at his funeral and refuse to accept any comfortable lie, that partly true isn't the same as honest. "Because you decided who I was before you ever asked," I said. "And once you decided, it was easier to let you keep believing it than to fight you for a seat at your table." Marcus made a small sound, like he wanted to defend her and couldn't quite find the words. Jennifer's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I'll give her that. Whatever else she wasn't a coward about it once the truth was standing in front of her in pajama pants at 3 in the morning. "I called you Marcus's dad who lives with us," she said quietly. "To the Hendersons. Last month. I heard you. You never said anything." What would I have said? Actually, I ran a department of 280 firefighters, and I've been to more funerals for other men's sons than any man should have to attend. It wouldn't have changed anything. You'd already decided what kind of old man I was going to be in your house. She put her face in her hands for a moment. When she looked up again, something had genuinely shifted behind her eyes. Not performance, not damage control. Something closer to shame, the real kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself with tears so much as with silence. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's not enough. I know that's not enough. But I am." I didn't answer right away. 29 years of leading a department teaches you that an apology offered in the heat of a crisis is worth listening to, but it isn't the same as trust rebuilt. Trust gets rebuilt in the boring hours afterward, not in the dramatic ones. "Okay," I said finally. "Thank you for saying it. That's all." She looked almost as startled as Ryan had once looked in another man's kitchen, though of course she didn't know that story, and neither did I yet, because it hadn't happened. But I recognized the shape of the moment anyway. People always expect forgiveness to arrive with fireworks. It rarely does. Usually it just quietly declines to slam the door. "That's all for tonight," I said. "The rest of it we'll see." The insurance process took 6 weeks. Marcus and Jennifer stayed at the hotel, then a short-term rental, while the kitchen and the damaged framing got rebuilt. I went back to our old house, my house, technically, the one Carol and I had bought 31 years ago and that I'd never actually sold, just locked up and mostly ignored since I moved in with Marcus. I hadn't told them I still owned it either. There was a lot, apparently, that I hadn't told anyone. Jennifer came by twice during those 6 weeks, not to ask for anything. The first time, she brought a folder, Printouts about smoke detector standards, wiring codes, things she'd clearly researched at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, the way people research things when guilt needs somewhere to go. The second time, she brought Lily and asked, quietly, standing on my porch, whether I'd tell her granddaughter about the fires. The real ones. Not to scare her. So she'd know what her grandfather actually did with his life. I said yes. I told Lily, in small pieces appropriate for a 3-year-old, about the trucks, about the helmets, about how Grandpa used to help people when their houses got scary. I didn't tell her about Danny Alvarez. That story belonged to grown-ups, and even then, only to the ones who'd earned it. Word got around the department, the way word always does. A few of the younger guys reached out, wanting to hear stories from the old chief. Captain Reyes, Danny's captain, now a battalion chief himself, invited me to speak at the academy graduation that spring. I hadn't spoken publicly since my retirement ceremony 6 years earlier. I said yes to that too. Jennifer came to the graduation. She sat in the 3rd row next to Marcus, holding Lily, and when Reyes introduced me, Chief Walter Doyle, 29 years of service, the man who trained half this room's instructors, I watched her face the whole time. Not proud, exactly. Something quieter than pride. Recognition, maybe. The particular expression of someone finally seeing a person clearly after months of only seeing the shape they'd decided to see. Afterward, in the parking lot, she found me by my truck. I keep thinking about all the dinners, she said. All the times I talked over you. All the times I decided what you were capable of without asking. I know. I don't know how to undo 18 months of that. You don't undo it, I said. You just stop doing it going forward. That's the only version of an apology that ever actually means anything. She nodded slowly. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Would you want to move back into the house? The rebuilt one? Not the garage room. There's a 1st floor room now, actually, with its own door. I had the contractor at it during the rebuild. She paused. I should have asked you months ago what you wanted instead of deciding for you. I thought about that for a long moment, the way I try to think about anything before I give it my real answer. Ask me again in a month, I said, once we've had a few ordinary Tuesdays to see if any of this sticks. She smiled, small and a little sad, but real. That's fair. It's been 8 months since the fire. I did move back, eventually, into that 1st floor room with its own door. Jennifer introduces me now, when it comes up, as Chief Doyle, my father-in-law, and she says it like she means it, not like she's performing correction for an audience. She asks me things now before deciding them for me. Whether I want to come to Lily's preschool events, whether I'm up for a long car ride, whether I mind the noise of a Saturday full of children. Small questions. The kind that used to embarrass me to need, and that I've since learned aren't embarrassing at all. They're just what respect sounds like when it's actually being practiced instead of assumed. I keep Danny's badge on the dresser in that 1st floor room now, out where anyone can see it. Lily asked about it once. I told her it belonged to a very brave young man I used to know. She asked if I missed him. I told her every single day. I don't know if Jennifer and I will ever be exactly what people imagine when they picture a father-in-law and daughter-in-law who've always understood each other. Some kinds of trust get built slowly, one ordinary evening at a time, and there's no shortcut through that no matter how dramatic the fire that started the rebuilding. But I know this. Nobody in that house has called me Marcus's dad who lives with us in 8 months. And when the smoke alarm goes off now, and it does, occasionally, because Jennifer insists on testing them monthly, a habit she picked up the week after the fire and has never once skipped, she doesn't ask if it's the dishwasher anymore. She just looks at me and waits to hear what I know. If someone in your life has quietly become smaller in the eyes of the people who should know better, I hope this reminds you that the truth doesn't always need to be announced. Sometimes it just needs the right moment to be seen. And if this story reminded you of someone you love, or someone who deserves to be seen more clearly, share it with them. Someone out there needs the reminder that being underestimated isn't the same as being unimportant.